Hey everyone, it's Christian, your local realtor, and for today's video I want to talk to you about the NDP government's decision to cap rental increases to 2%. Now this is a kick in the nuts if you're a landlord or if you're a homeowner and you happen to be renting out your suites. And it just shows that this government is really out of touch with the needs and the realities that homeowners and landlords face. Quite simply, I mean, if you own a home like I do, and you may, if you're watching this video, you'll know that your insurance has gone up, your taxes have gone up, your strata fees have gone up. You know, when we first bought our first 2-bedroom condo, this is about 5-6 years ago, strata fees for a 2-bed were between $300 and $400. The average strata fee for a 2-bedroom now is between $500 and $600. Insurance has gone up. I remember, I think, paying $29 a month for insurance for that first place. Average insurance costs are now between $50 and $70 a month. And if the building you live in has had a water incident, I've heard of clients paying $200 a month after the fact in insurance. That's and with 2 different coverages, because that's what they needed. So coming back to this point, this 2% cap is a joke. I mean, imagine forcing restaurants to cap their dishes at $21. You can only charge $21 for this dish. You can only charge $16 for that dish. I mean, you would put the restaurateurs out of business, and you certainly would not incentivize them to open more restaurants and provide more jobs. And it's the same thing when it comes to building homes, building a purpose-built apartment rentals. Those are not going to come on the market if the government makes it so difficult for landlords, for investors to make money. There's this great comment I read at the bottom of an article. You know, you're scrolling down at the bottom of the article, you're done, and then there's all the comments. And this one guy wrote this comment about 9 days ago, which I couldn't say it better than myself. It just totally encapsulates everything. So his name here is Nikolai Nikiforov, and here's his comment on this 2% cap. He says, ludicrous. The rent increase allowance is completely inadequate in today's economy and extremely one-sided. Back when landlords could raise rent 2% above inflation, not everybody maxed out the allowable increase, since the rent was sufficient to cover the rising costs. Today's laughable increase cap doesn't even begin to cover the rising costs of the past few years. Did the NDP not see the rise in insurance and in property taxes, maintenance, and let's not forget interest rates, all without a cap or rebate for landlords? Where's the fairness in that? Rental investors are a critical part of the rental landscape and directly affect housing affordability, while rent control has the opposite effect. More on that later. Only look at what's happened to the market rents since the NDP started this unprecedented rental control policy in the province. This approach discourages investors from taking the risk of ownership and adding to the rental market, which reduces rental supply and in turn increases market rents. The point here this guy's making is bang, bang, bang on. He is saying, look, you're passing all the costs on to the landlords and you're not letting them pass anything on to the consumer. So guess what? Don't be surprised if we see more owners, landlords, sell their unit, their rental unit, to an end user, thereby taking one more unit out of the rental pool. And we see a lot of that happening, especially in Vancouver proper, where I think a lot of landlords are getting tired of dealing with the city and their sort of unpredictable tax policies. So that's one thing. And a couple of stories here, just to hit this point home. The media will portray this as, you know, a lot of evil landlords with blue horns that are, you know, taking advantage of tenants. And that's not always the case. I mean, I'll just give you a simple example. When we bought our very first place, we roughed it. I mean, it was pretty basic inside. And about a year later, we did a renovation and put about $45,000 into it. And then all of a sudden, I mean, this is a nice place. And my tenants, it was a young couple, they had a kid, and they were just so appreciative that we would rent that unit out to them. And they were some of the best tenants we've ever had. A couple other examples. I have a client and friend who rented his unit out, kept the rent the same for 7 years. After 7 years, when his costs were going up, like property taxes, insurance, and the interest rate, he asked the tenants and told them he'd be increasing the rent. And they're like, no, you can't do that. They said, well, that's not fair on your part. And he tried to explain to them, well, wait a minute, I kept the rent the same for 7 years. I didn't need to do that. And I did that also as a favor to you as well, and I'm happy to have you as a tenant. Anyway, long story short, so he ended up having to get them out of there because they were not willing to allow their rent to be increased. And you sometimes see this story spun the wrong way, meaning landlords being greedy. No, look, at the end of the day, this is a business. Landlords are not in this for charity, okay? They're not there to buy homes or buy condo units and lose money on them for a tenant to live there for nothing. It doesn't work that way. It's not realistic. And I'll give you one more example. I was recently helping a friend of mine, and she's actually a realtor, long time in the business. She was selling a unit after 9 years of owning it. Her tenant, a lady from the Philippines, is heading back to the Philippines. 9 years. She never raised the rent by $1. But you won't hear that in the newspaper, right? Because that kind of feel-good story, landlord keeps the rent the same for 9 years or 7 years or whatever the case, that doesn't get clicks. So you're going to hear the story about the landlord who rent-evicted his tenant. And let me tell you, it's not easy to rent-evict. Most landlords won't go down that option. You've got to go to the city. You've got to get approvals for that sort of thing. So that is not a common course. And I just want to touch on this too. Here you have a government, the NDP, talking, and they've been in power now since mid-2017, so more than 5 years now. And if you just look at the rents and how much one-bedroom rents have increased during the time that they have been in power. Here you have a snapshot from December 17th. You can see Vancouver leads the way across Canada. This is just before Christmas. And one beds, according to padmapper.com, were renting for $19.90 a month. Now, fast forward, here we are about 5 years later, and according to liverent.com, again, Vancouver leading the way, certainly in the Lower Mainland, $2,500, just shy of $2,500 a month. So we've seen a rent increase of $500 a month in the last 5 years, or $100 a year. And I mean, part of this is a function of the market, the demand. And while I don't say that it has everything to do with the NDP's decision to cap these increases, I certainly believe that it makes it harder for investors, and investors will just be less likely to buy here in BC. They may go elsewhere. Maybe they'll go to Alberta, maybe where the prices are cheaper. Maybe they'll go down south and buy something in states like Arizona or Texas, where it's a lot easier to buy a home and make a little bit of cash flow on it, which is a good thing. So those are just a few comments. Finally, I just in doing a bit of research for this video, I did come across what the rent controls have done in Toronto. And in Toronto, and this is a quote I'm going to read to you, the purpose-built rental universe has remained steady across most of Canada. In the Greater Toronto Area, GTA, the number of purpose-built rentals has remained around 330,000 units for more than a decade. During the same time, the number of rental condos in the GTA increased from 50,000 to 100,000 units. So it's not just in the Lower Mainland, but in other parts of Canada too, where we see when you have these more restrictive policies where you do not let the landlords at least pass on a fair share, a reasonable amount to the tenant. They just may not get in the business. In this case, in the GTA, they're talking about purpose-built rentals. Obviously, you're talking about big companies. If they can't make money, they're not going to bother, right? So what I want you to take from this video is just consider some of these government policies. They sound good, right? Oh, 2%, we're going to cap it at 2%. How lovely. However, in the long run, I think it may cost tenants a lot more. So if you enjoyed watching this video, if you got your comments or questions, you can leave those below and subscribe. We do appreciate it and love having you.